One. Welcome back to the podcast, you beautiful souls. I have an incredible, inspiring guest with me today. I have Maddie from Maddie Functional Fat Loss, and she has got a story that's going to inspire you today and hopefully give you some strength and some inspiration to work through things that you're working through. Just to read a bit of an introduction on who she is and what she does. We are all about rock bottom to a new beginning. We started as a weight loss and transformational platform, but are slowly transitioning to including help for anyone suffering from a rock bottom position, whether that be addictional or mental health struggles. We help people rebuild through functional nutrition and movement that makes sense. We help people change their current behaviors and create new sustainable habits. So that's that is such a beautiful, I guess, description of what you do, but I know there's so much depth to what's led you to that, Maddie. First and foremost, thank you for joining me today.
No worries.
We are just chatting obviously before we click record, and mate, you've
Yep.
got quite a story. So I'd love to hear your story in your words, and for the listeners listening, yeah, just get maybe a bit of perspective and get some strength and some inspiration to go through what it is that you've been through and to be able to be the woman that you're proud to be today. So, mate, over to
Sure.
you. I'd love to hear the story.
Okay, so my story has a couple of different elements. I have experienced a couple of different rock bottom situations in my life. I'll start with I guess the first one at my youngest age. So from the ages of 13 to 17, I spent the majority of those 4 years institutionalized in a child psychiatric ward. I suffered from a really severe eating disorder. I had anorexia, and I was considered one of the top three worst cases that the head psychiatrist in Australia has ever treated. The other two females have since passed. Their addictions, their anorexia got the better of them. Now, my story from there, my mum would say my recovery was worse than my illness. So I spent the 4 years in hospital. And then at the age of 17, they sort of not give you the option, but sort of said to my mum and dad, look, we've got two options here. You can either take her home because she's now 17, or we can send her to an adult. They recommended the adult ward. Mum and dad decided that they'd give me a shot going home. And they were pretty much told, you take her home, she's going to die. So I went to my grade 12 formal at 28 kilos. So to put that in perspective, I haven't grown any taller, and that is literally half the weight that I am now. And I pretty much got to the point where I nearly died. I was able to spin that around, I think, by being around more normal people again, if for lack there of a better word, and was able to sort of spin that on its head and sort of make a recovery out of that. After that, in 2015, I unfortunately lost my father to suicide. I think many things led to his decisions to go down that path, but unfortunately, it then led to another really rock bottom spiral for myself and actually my husband as well. From 2000 and pretty much 15 to 2000 and the end of 2016, my husband and I, hopefully he doesn't mind me saying that, were drug addicts. And when I say drug addicts, we had $1,000 a day habit. We were living
Wow.
in our car. We had 4 dogs that we were carting around. We had nowhere to live. We were really in a really bad place after he passed. My family wanted nothing to do with me. I was very disconnected from my mum and my sister for a very long time, him from his family also. And slowly we were able to, well, not slowly, we were sort of put in a position where we had to. It was either you live on the streets or you have to rebuild from this point. And we were lucky enough that we had somewhere to go. We had Gundawindi to come to. We had my husband's mum and dad's were willing to let us come back into the family, I guess, and we're able to slowly rebuild. And we're lucky enough then that within 5 months of being clean, we fell pregnant with our son. And then from that point forward, he just gave us the purpose. It's just been from 7 years, oh, sorry, not 7 years ago, he's what, 6. So from 6 years ago, from someone that you probably wouldn't have pissed on if I was on fire, like we were pretty shitty people, to now, like we now have our own farm. My husband's doing his helicopter license. You know, we looked at buying helicopters the other day. I've built my business to a certain level. You know, I've got like we've completely transformed our lives from like rummaging around trying to feed a drug habit to now, you know, looking by helicopter. Like it's pretty cool.
Wow. I'm sure there's so much more within all of those sort of iterations and
There is.
that in those chapters. We might go into a
Yeah.
little bit of them, but I just wanted to commend like that's such to be able to go through the dark night of the soul. And yours is quite dark compared to some others, and there's some more turbulence in there. To be able to come through the other side is fucking inspiring, and it's something that
Thank you.
yeah, and you're very, very welcome. It's like I'm inspired by people that have that go, and I think we all are. Like when it comes easy to people and you don't have to work for it, it's like the trust fund baby. It's like you don't cherish. We cherish the things that we fight for, and to be able to. And you're obviously a fighter. You've obviously gone through those ups and downs. I'd like to look. There's kind of like 3 phases. I'd like to hear your version of. Is one,
Sure.
I think, like I guess what. And please don't take this in an offensive way, but like what got you into those habits? Like what got you into that pattern? What got you into that dark place? What
Which
was it
one?
like in the middle?
First one or second one?
Whatever one you want to answer. You can answer which one you feel like answering.
Okay.
What was it like in the middle? And when I say in the middle, I'll remind you of the questions if you forget them. But like, just like what's going on? Like because you can't do anything until you're conscious, right? And until you, like you said, started to rebuild and had the sun, had purpose and all that stuff, like a lot of consciousness would have come along with that. But like to be able to make that decision to rebuild takes some level of consciousness, and to go from like unconscious of just literally $1,000 a day addiction that you're scrummaging around for, like you said, to be able to make that decision, there's obviously something's happened. So yeah, I'll remind you of the questions as we go through them, but yeah, what was it like? What sort of got you into those patterns?
Into the bad patterns first or the good patterns? The bad patterns.
Yeah.
So I think like my father's sudden passing was definitely what spiraled it. I mean, like any, I guess, young people, there was always the dabble in this and the dabble on that on the weekend and a party or whatever, right? And then when he just suddenly just left and it made absolutely no sense, and he left this note that made absolutely no sense, and it was just all very confusing. And he was my husband's best friend as well. Like my dad and Wes were very, very, very close. So we sort of lost a best friend, we lost my dad, like we lost everything in one hit. And I think that we just turned to the thing that, you know, just kind of makes you feel better. And then it sort of like went from like, okay, we'll try that to try that. The next minute you go from like the weekend to the next day to the next day to next minute you're using every day, and then you're quitting your job or you've been fired, or, you know, and then you just start to go down. And once it kicks off, it's really hard to pull it back, because let's be honest, like there's a period where it's fun. You know, it's fun for a while. You know, like there's, you know, maybe the first 3 or 4 months, it's fun. It's great. It's awesome. There's lots of cool shit going on. But then very quickly it goes from fun to like, what the fuck just happened? And I don't know how to catch myself. And now the bills are piling up, and now the you know, like the real estate agent's telling me to move out, and I've got 4 dogs. So at one point we had 12 because we had 2 dogs and 10 puppies, and we had nowhere to put them. And it was like, it just kind of just spiraled, and it just took over at its own pace. You know, like you don't start with $1,000 a day habit. It just kind of, you end up there very quickly. So I think Dad's passing and then just kind of burying the grief. We never dealt with the grief. I think it was only about once Lincoln was born, that's when we started to, not even, probably once he was like 2 or 3, we both started to be able to deal with the grief of Dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's definitely what spiraled that one, 100%.
And thank you for the vulnerability. I know that's big with what you do now these days.
Okay.
What was it like during it? I know you answered a little bit just then. Like, what was going through your head on a daily basis? Like, what were the thoughts that were occupying your head? What was the, I guess, self-talk like? What was your level of consciousness like back then? And I'm
Mhm.
asking this for like people that may or may not be there right now. So people that are listening are like, that's me. That's like,
Yep.
because you don't know what you don't know, right? People are doing the best
Yep.
with what they've got.
Mhm.
So yeah, what was sort of your headspace like in that
Those
period?
moments.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned like consciousness. I think that during the addiction, there's no level of consciousness. Like your ability to determine between what is conscious and what is unconscious is very like it's so artificial. Like all of the people you're hanging around, like you're up for 3 or 4 days at a time. Like when most people are like getting up for work and going to work, you may be going to bed or you're on day 4. Like at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're up doing like heaps of cool shit, thinking like, why are these people asleep? It's like there's not really any level of like consciousness at the time. You just think, and because you're around, and my eating disorder was the same, it's like because you're around people that are doing the same stuff, it all becomes very normal. It's like this is the normal way of living. Like, what are the weird people doing? Like they're all fucking going to work, or
Yeah.
boring people. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? Like, it's so fucking boring. You know what I mean? But like, because everyone you're around is in the same world of weird paranoia things going, like, so I think that there is no consciousness at all until you get to that really bottom point where you're like, this can't continue.
Can you tell us about
Um,
that moment? Like, what was the
that
turning
bottom
point?
part. So the turning point, I can remember the turning point, I can remember the day. So the turning point was like my I lent on I have always lent on my mum a lot. And I lent on my mum a lot. We sort of stayed talking throughout the addiction, but it was very much like, I need money, I need money, I need money. And she was kind of like, she was always giving it to me, knowing very well where it was going, but I guess hoping it wasn't, because I was telling it was like for fuel or it was for this, and obviously she knew it wasn't. But it got to a point where I guess she realized that she had to just say no. And the only way to get me and Wes, I guess, to a better place was to just go, like, to do the hard thing and like cut us off. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Don't call me. Don't speak to me. Don't ask me for anything. The answer's no. And I remember being out the front of her house one time on the day that she said to me, you need to go to Gundawindi. Your only option is to go to Gundawindi. I'm not helping you anymore. You
Mm.
cannot stay in this house anymore. You are not welcome in this house anymore. And if you come in this house, I will call the cops. Because she was just like, you need to go there. You need to get away from these people. You need to get away from this place. Then I remember being across the road with the 4 dogs in our car and being across the road and like being absolutely fucking furious at her, being like, how could you fucking do this to me? Like, how could you do this to me? Like, why won't you let me stay there? Like, just thinking that she was the worst person in the world. Anyway, she ended up, I was on the phone to her and I was across the road and she let me in, and then she drove in from wherever she was and she handed me, I think it was $300, and she said, this is the last $300 I'm giving you. I will not give you any more money. You either choose to use this for whatever you want, or you
Mm.
choose to use this for fuel and you drive yourself to Gundawindi. They know you're coming. You're welcome. You're both welcome there. You're nose welcome there, and that's where you need to be. Do what you want with the $300, but if you do something else with it, find your own way to Gundy. And anyway, we ended up. I think we spent a portion of it on something stupid, on drugs. But we did put fuel in the car and drive to Gundy. And I remember when we got to Gundy at night, and Wes's family were, because we hadn't really spoken to them for a long time. You come very disconnected. Like I said, you're awake when they're asleep. They're trying to call when you're trying to sleep. Like it's, you very much become disconnected because your time zone and their time zone are totally different things. And we drove in the driveway and there was an ambulance in the driveway. I remember being in an ambulance. I was like, why there's an ambulance here? This is weird. Anyway, Wes's mom had actually had like a panic attack, like an anxiety attack, knowing we were coming, because she was like, I haven't spoken to my son in so long. We haven't spoken to Maddie in so long. All these things are happening, that they thought she was having a heart attack. And they had to
Wow.
call the ambulance because she had such a bad, like she had such bad anxiety. And that was our introduction back to Gundy. Like, hey, sorry, we like nearly gave you a heart attack, but we're back. Sorry, I haven't spoken to you in like 2 years, but we need your help. And we slowly were able to rebuild from there. But man, it wasn't easy. Like, because then you've got to, because when you get back to Gundy, then obviously the reason that we left the coast and why everyone was pushing us out here was, well, then the drugs are harder to get. You don't have the connections that you had. You're not going to drive back to the Gold Coast. You don't have the money to drive back to the Gold Coast.
Oh, so you
Um,
you were from the Gold Coast. This is when it was
yeah,
happening. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, so that's how, I don't even know where I was going with that now. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so Yeah, I totally lost it. Then help me out here, Lewis.
That's all right. So just sort of if I'll circle back to one
Yep.
key point and then we'll keep going with that.
Yep.
So mum gives you $300 and she
Yep.
literally gives you that kind of look. You can do what you want or you can make a good decision.
Yeah.
What made you make the good decision?
I think we were just fed up. Yeah, like you eventually get to a point, I think, where you realize that what you're doing you can't sustain. You know what I mean? Like we were couch surfing, and like it's one thing to couch surf, it's one thing to couch surf from drug house to drug house with four dogs. And when I say four dogs, like we're not talking like four chihuahuas. We had four American Staffy pit bulls.
Wow.
Like we're not like living in our car with us. They ate before we ate. They're exceptionally well looked after dogs.
Yeah.
But like it's one thing, yeah, you can't, there's only so many places you can lob with six of you, like, and for, yeah. So I think it just got to the point where it was like, well, we actually don't have any other options. Like there's literally nowhere else to go. We either camp in this park or we get in the car and we go to Gundy. And we went.
Yeah.
But it was very hard when we got back because there was a lot of rebuilding of trust that had to be done. You know what I mean? Like you're living in a house with people that you haven't spoken to in a while. They don't trust you. You don't really want to be there. You spend the first couple of weeks coming off drugs as well. So there's all that psychological stuff going on. Yeah, so I think it was just there was just no other option at all.
There's a quote, I'll probably butcher it, but there was a quote that comes to mind. It's like real transformation happens when you finally get fed up with your own shit or something along the lines of that.
I love that.
Kind of something you relate to from what you said?
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you at that point as well, like I think because we never fully lost ourselves, like we did lose ourselves, but I think we never really lost that like good part of us. There was still that good part of us still there. We didn't lose all of it. So eventually start looking around, like you're sitting in a room full of people and eventually start looking around going like what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like why am I choosing to fill my day with this?
Yeah.
Like these conversations, these particular people, like this stuff, and you just sort of, eventually you get sick of the shit. You get
Beautiful.
sick of, yeah.
And what was the I guess like you were saying it was hard. What was the work like? Like what was because I'm sure there would have been some thoughts like fuck this, we can go back and like give up this, it's not worth it, or I'm assuming some inner dialogue came up. What was like you can use the word recovery if you want to use that. What was the turnaround like?
It was very hard. So when we got back to Gundy, we ended up having to go and see a drug counselor. It was actually court appointed, because things got really like obviously very messy. So it was court appointed because we were actually charged with some drug offenses, very minor drug offenses, but still nonetheless, they were drug offenses. So you get appointed to go to have to see like a drug counselor. And that was the only sort of counselor we ever saw. And we got on with her really well. And she really helped to a point. But then we ended up going and seeing another therapist here in town. And she made the comment to me one time, it'll take 18 months from the last time you use for your brain to function normally again.
Wow.
And I can tell you 100% it takes 18 months.
Yeah.
And she always said to us, and if you use once in that 18 months, it starts again. So whatever like the neurological aspect is, and that 18 months was rough. And we did part of that with the newborn. And I remember like my husband going back to work, and you don't get so much with the withdrawals. You don't so much get like physical withdrawals from the particular drug that we were using. It's more psychological. And there was a lot of like really bad anxiety that came with that for us. And I remember like my husband, like most days walking out, to go back to work, and he'd be vomiting on his way out the door because his anxiety was so bad. And I remember being, I remember having a newborn, and this is like I said, this is like 18 months nearly after having used for the last time, like waking up or my husband going to work and then being like, I don't know what to do with this baby. Like, I don't know what to do that wakes up. And I remember calling him and saying, I don't know what to do. If Lincoln wakes up, I don't know what to do with him. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know what to do with him, but I don't know what to do with him. Like I was so overtired and my brain was everything was so anxiety provoking that he actually went and stayed with his mum and dad for just 2 nights, just while we got our stuff back together. But there was just, there's so much psychological stuff, like the anxiety attacks that I would get even like while I was like pregnant, and all I could do was walk. It was like as long as I was walking, I was fine. And I'd get on the phone to my mum and just talk to her for like 2 hours. And she'd be able to talk me out of whatever was going on in my head. So it was a lot of, for us, like psychological work that had to go on. And a lot of that was done through a therapist and then just family and then just communication between the two of us.
Before we dive into, I guess the new chapter, what you're doing now, how you're helping people, maybe
Yep.
what's some words of advice for people that are either at the start, in the middle, or at the end? What's just some words of advice that you'd maybe say to yourself?
Okay, so at the start, I don't think there's anything you can say at the start because it's only just started. And like I said, at the start, you sort of it sort of still seems fun, I guess. You don't realize that you're losing control. In the middle, I think is where you start to somewhat realize that this is a problem. Like, like funds are starting to run out, starting to struggle to pay your rent. Maybe you've quit your job by now. Like you can see that things are spiraling, but they're still kind of fun, but you're not really sure. Like that's the point where you need to realize you need to get out now. Because if you get out now, that's where you can spin it around and you don't have to rebuild everything. Like you don't have to rebuild all your finances. You don't have to rebuild all your relationships. You don't have to rebuild everything, So my advice is to get out there and you have to get away from the stuff. You have to get away from the people. You have to get away from the temptation. And if you're at the end, my advice is just keep fucking climbing. Like don't look back. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other because it doesn't get easier. Like it's a grind from the moment that you decide to go from that rock bottom to rebuild. You've just gotta fucking grind because and every time you take at the start, I remember like you take 2 steps forward and something would push you like 10 fucking steps back. And then you take another 2 steps forward and you get pushed back, because like someone would call or, like a debt collector would call and you're like, that's right. I forgot that I hadn't paid that rent for like 6 months and I still owe that. Or you know what I mean? Like those sorts of things are things you don't even think about. And so my advice, if you're there and you're just starting to rebuild, expect those things. They're gonna come at you and you just gotta keep going.
Fucking great advice. There's one quote that I'm a quotes person. If you haven't gathered that, there's it's not a quote, it's more so a story. There was this. I'll butcher the details, but you'll get the message. It was the all these veterans that went to a war. I forget the details, and they're all addicted to drugs. It was like heroin or something like that while they were over there. When they came back, a lot of people thought that a lot of them would maintain that addiction. But when they came back, because they removed themselves from the environment, 95% of them actually gave up. And if you compare that to the statistics of people who are like in their own country, who go to therapy, the relapse rate is insane because they keep going back to the same environment. So yeah, it's you really triggered that from your advice for when you're in the middle. Mate, great stuff. Okay, let's get into what you're doing now. So what are you doing now? What's the mission? What do you love? And yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so like you said when you introduced me, like my main core business is nutrition. So I guess like your typical online coach, nutrition training, all that sort of stuff. But it's not, although it's my passion, it's not like my deep core passion. Like I love being able to take people from that rock bottom, whatever that rock bottom is, like whether it be addiction, whether it be financial, whether it be relationship, whatever it is, health, whatever it is, right? I like to take people from there back up. I like to see people get back up and be able to be that support system. So that's sort of like what the main core of my business is. And we're trying to like now branch more into that aspect of helping people. But still through the same principles and same protocols. Like it doesn't matter really what area of your life you're struggling with. Like I'm not, if your rock bottom is financial, I'm not going to help you financial coaching, obviously. But if your rock bottom is financial and you're trying to rebuild, well, we can still rebuild you through good habits because if you're feeling good and you're functioning well and you're sleeping well and you're eating well and all those things, all that holistic stuff's going on well for you, the other stuff sort of doesn't just fall into place, but as you get hit by things, they're easier to deal with.
Yeah.
And they're 100%. Easier, you know what I mean? And same with like addiction. Like I love addiction. It's one of my favorite things to coach people out of because I've been there. So when you get someone say something like, I know you're bullshitting me. I know that's rubbish. I know, you know what I mean? Like you call people and they're bullshit. And I love being able to call people and they're bullshit because it makes them go, oh, okay, fuck. Okay, well, I was lying to you. And I'm also, now I realize I'm lying to myself. I love that. But yeah, so we do all of it through basically like a holistic approach, even though I hate that word,
Yeah.
of like movement and nutrition and habits. And we have like an online portal that takes you through like a behavioral change concept and all that sort of stuff.
Gorgeous stuff. A couple points I'd like you to go a little bit deeper into is
Yeah.
there's Ed Milet. He's an awesome speaker if you follow his stuff. He has like this video went quite viral. It's like get yourself a good set of habits because when you're stressed and life fucks you or hits you or whatever, you're going to default back to those habits. So
Yes.
what habits what are some recommendations for people listening? What are some habits that have really served you and that you really, I guess, recommend for your clients?
Movement, 100%. Movement is, and I know people are probably like, yeah, oh my God, I've heard this so many fucking times. But it's like I said, movement for me was like the one thing that when my brain wasn't functioning properly, I had to move. Like you aren't going to, if you're in a bad headspace, whether you're feeling depressed, anxious, you just don't know what to do with yourself, you're having one of those days where you're like, I just feel sad and I don't know why, or whatever it is, like you can't be sad if you're outside. Like
Yeah.
it's very hard to keep feeling all of that sadness or anxiety or overwhelm if you're outside in the sun, moving, walking, jump on a phone to a friend or a coach or whoever it is that you talk to. It's really hard to stay in that negative headspace.
Yeah.
So just getting out, like you don't have to go and do a gym session, like literally just get out in the sun and just walk.
Yeah.
And just like even listen to a podcast, whatever it is that helps turn you off and walk for as long as you have to.
Yeah.
It's like it's the one thing that really helped me.
Fantastic.
100%.
Have
Yeah.
you got another one? That was beautiful.
Um, my other one's definitely, I guess, because it's what I coach, but nutrition. You know what I mean? Like if you eat like shit, you can feel like shit. Do you know what I mean? Like just because like, and I guess the problem with that is when you feel like shit, right? And you're sitting in the same four walls, what
Yeah.
do you want? Cookies, ice cream, or if you're a savory person, you might want the pizza or the two or three toasted sandwich, whatever it is, right? Then you get that dopamine hit. You get that very short term, I feel good while you're eating it, but that makes you feel worse again. So
Yeah.
being really careful of like what you're fueling your body with so that it actually makes you feel better. And again, catch yourself on bullshit. You know what I mean? Like if you're feeling crappy and you're just sitting in the four walls and you're going to go walk to the pantry, maybe detour and go, oh, actually, I should probably go put my shoes on
Mm.
and now go outside. You know what I mean? Like detour past that pantry, guys. Like we'll
Mm.
be, trust me.
Epic, epic. I like the bullshit thing. I'd love your honest thoughts on this, and I'll share a quick
Yep.
story. I had it was a team member, and I'll be private about this person's information, but I was
Yep.
working with this team member, and I was trying to help this person with their health, and they were in the fitness industry, but their health was not great, and they were
Yep.
trying to work on themselves to help their clients, and we were literally doing body scans, check-ins. Like I was I've come from the fitness industry, so I've owned gyms and. I was working with this person as like their employer, but also their kind of like accountability coach to help them with health, even though I'm in the fitness industry. So it was a bit of a weird
Yep.
situation that I was in.
Yeah.
And it's like this person, like we were doing scans. Well, they were doing the scans. They were telling me and they were sending me the results, but later to find out they were lying. They were lying about the scans, the results, the
Mm.
measurements, and whatever. And I was so pumped for this person. I was like cheering them up. I'm like, fuck yeah, keep going. We're doing this. And
Yeah.
then like this person just broke down in tears one day. I was like, what's going on? And they just said I've been lying. And I said, oh, why? It's like jumped on the scan. We had a body scanner at the gym.
Yeah.
Jumped on the body scanner and like the results were like this person said they had lost like 10 kilos, but they'd put on 10.
Oh
And
wow.
it was like, and I felt like putting my head through the wall. I was like, I've failed this person. I've failed like this person. I care and I love this person. I've failed them. And I was beating myself up as someone who cared and helped. But at the end of the day, like for the accountability, this person, it was their shit. They weren't being honest. They
No.
were bullshitting themselves. So what would be your advice to someone who's bullshitting themselves right now from either a challenging or a supportive way? What advice would you give?
I think you need to come back to like why you're doing things. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're bullshitting yourself, telling you like I'm trying everything, I've got no time, I'm not good enough, I can't afford it, whatever it is, I think you need to call yourself your own bullshit and you come back to like your own why. Like why do I want this? And trying to work out, is it something that you want? Or is it something that someone else has told you that you want or that you should do? Because if the reason why you're trying to achieve something isn't strong enough, then it's just not going to happen. It's like why people go in and out of rehab centers because like usually they're court appointed or family appointed. You know, they generally don't walk in a rehab center and go, I want to get clean.
Yeah.
Because if they did, when they walk out, they generally stay clean. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the same in this situation. It sounds like to me, this person either felt like they had to, like whether it was like pressures because they worked in a gym and they were so supposed to look a certain way, or family member or someone saying whatever. It sounds like they thought that that's what they wanted, but it really wasn't what they wanted. And that the pressure then to deliver on something that wasn't really important enough to them was then too much pressure, and it just blew out the other way. So I think you need to make sure that what you're doing is actually for you first and foremost, because if it's not, it's just not going to work. It just won't.
Great advice. Well, look, we've got time for a couple more questions. What are you
Yeah.
working on at the moment? What's the passion right now? What are you doing business wise? What are you working on yourself from a personal level?
Okay, so on a business aspect, we're just trying to currently just keep like building, really, which is why I think you interviewed Jenna the other day or a little while ago. It's why I've got Jenna from Big Appetite on board now. She really helps with the areas of my business that I'm just going to admit I suck at, which is like like the marketing part. One of the really important parts of a business growing, I suck at. So we've brought her on, a Big Appetite on, to help with that. We're working on just like more content stuff and really being really on the ball with more user-generated content and more data-driven decisions, and really trying to expand more into like not pigeonholing into that like just weight loss aspect, like I was saying before, like being able to branch out further than that. And then hopefully bringing on some other coaches, people that have got more experience than me in areas that can help with those particular clients coming on as well. Awesome. Which I think are really good. Like, you know, if your rock bottom's financial, having someone financial, like coaching wise, to be able to help with that aspect as well as what I do. Awesome. And then starting like our own podcast. So we've got in the mix, I'm trying to get my own podcast, sort of just started to, I guess, for the people that can't afford my services, that I can still be able to help them, and they can still get something from functional fat loss.
That's the complete reason I've got my podcast. So
just so that because not everyone can afford the price tag, and I've been the person that couldn't afford the price tag. You know, like I've been there before, and it sucks. You know, so and if you're really sort of jamming with someone online, but then they tell you their price, I can't afford that. You know, at least then you can go listen to the stuff that's free, and you can work your way through that.
Yeah. So that. Very relate to that.
Yeah, and then I guess on a personal level.
Sorry to pause you.
You're right.
What's the vision for that? And then we'll go into the personal stuff. So what's
the vision for the podcast?
For the business, for what you're doing and the impact you're making.
So the vision's definitely, it's the very simple core of like rock bottom to a new beginning. Like I want to get as many people from where I was and whatever that looks like to a new beginning as possible. Like I want them to know that you can do it. It's gonna suck, but you can get there. And I like that is my main driving force all the time, to get that, because it just, like, when you're at the bottom there, you just like it. I remember like looking at the top of the mountain and being like, how the fuck do I do that? You know, like I said, like it's not just getting over the addiction. It's like, it's the debts that you owe. It's it's not having a job. It's kind of being pretty unemployable for a while. It's all of that stuff. The fact that you haven't spoken to any normal friends or family, and having them rebuild those relationships on top of everything else. Like the mountain is massive. And I think that no matter what rock bottom it is, I feel like that mountain's just as big each time, and it looks similar to everyone. So really getting that is the core, beautiful. Really. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And as you were personally as well.
Personally, I think just continue to just grow. Like my journey, so not so much addiction wise, but my journey from my eating disorder will be an ever going, evolving journey. You know, I still personally struggle a lot with like body image issues and really like bad, hard days when it comes to that. So personally, just being able to continue to move past those and not being too hard on myself, and just being better at that. And then just continuing to better myself in every area, you know, like better my communication, you know, always working on like your relation, or like my marriage, you know, always working on being a better parent, always working on being a better business person, and just learning.
I love that. Love. Last
Thanks.
message. Any I guess closing words, any other messages? We'll still plug you at the end of after this question as well. But
Yeah.
just any final words or advice that you want to give to that's on your mind that you want to share?
Not really. I don't think. I think I've covered pretty much of like most things. I guess just if you're feeling stuck, reach out to someone, whether it be you contact me or whether it be that you contact someone that you know or you just start somewhere. Just start because reaching out for help or even just admitting that you need help in an area is usually the hardest part.
Yeah.
And then once you've done it, then you can learn the strategies that you need to learn to be able to continue to move forward.
Fuck yeah. Love it.
Thanks.
This is my closing question I normally give people. You kind of just
Okay.
answer it though, so it might be the
Okay.
same answer, but it's what are you working on behind closed doors that other people don't get to see?
Um, I guess always. I guess, like I said, the body image thing, that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
Because like even though my eating disorder, like I think I'm 34, 34. Even though I recovered from my eating disorder, around that 18, 19, 20 sort of, it's a few year journey of recovery, it's something that never leaves you. Like I know every female, most males probably as well, like have bad body image days. But when I have them, they're bad. I will when undressing before getting in the shower, I will deliberately turn and face the other wall. Like I don't want to look at myself in the mirror. Like it's something that I really struggle with. And when it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah.
So continuing to work on that and then during those times, like being able to turn around and looking around, it's like there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. Like those sorts of things. And then always like working on my marriage, like there's anything wrong with my marriage. My marriage is great, but always continuing to work on that, like, and
Yeah.
ensuring, like, after you've been with someone for 10, 13, 12, 13 years, you have to work on it. Otherwise, if you don't work on something, it dies, So always being actively working on that, because if those two aspects of my life, that personal stuff that goes on in my head with the body image stuff and my marriage are in check, then I feel like the rest of my life kind of, it all flows really nice. Like I'm a better mum, I'm a better wife, I'm a better business person, I'm better with my clients,
Fuck
So
yeah.
those are the two aspects that are really important.
Beautiful, Maddie. This has been a beautiful conversation. I've really enjoyed
Thanks.
it. You've inspired the shit out of me. I've gotten a ton of takeaways as well. So really awesome.
Amazing.
If someone wants to connect with you from professional reasons, just say you're a fucking legend. What do you say, Gundy? Is that how you say it?
Gundy, yeah,
They're in
Gundy.
Gundy. They want to catch up.
Yep.
Where can they find you?
Okay, so I've only got one Instagram page. So it's Maddie, Madi_functional fat loss.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can just go to my website, www.functionalfatloss.com.au.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Maddie, for your time. Thank you, listeners, for getting all the way to the end. Share this with a friend. Reach out to Maddie. And one more time, Maddie, thank you so much.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Lewis.